Hey everyone, Brendan Snyder here. How are you? Thank you so much for joining me and welcome to the 10 music questions I get asked the most. So I thought I'd put this video together here because I get asked these all the time and I don't mind answering them, but some of them are really interesting. Some of them are ones that until I was asked I had never really thought about. And so it's kind of fun being able to answer those and come up with something that for myself was even meaningful. But I'm going to run through the 10 that I get asked the most and see what you guys think about the responses to these things. Stick around all the way to the very end because I've got something to announce there you might be interested in. And certainly if you haven't already subscribed, please do. Also leave a comment, hit like. All those things help support my channel. I would greatly appreciate it if you turn on notifications. You'll stay up to date on really cool videos just like this with the 10 music questions I get asked the most. All right, so these maybe aren't ones that everybody gets asked, but they're certainly the ones that have come to me, especially through this channel. So first one up is, why do you own over 12,000 CDs? And for me at least, it's really about forming a music library. And I will also say that most times when I get asked that question, it's people who don't believe that I should own that many. So they're ones that have only a few hundred or something. And so a lot of times they're trying to put me down in that regard. But there is a real reason. It is not just for collecting purposes. It is not what some people say, which is hoarding, because that has nothing to do with being so organized and collective of the things that you get like this. This is a passion. But for me, creating that music library so that I have access to anything I desire right at my fingertips when I'm in the mood for it. So you get that brand new release that just came out on Friday and you're really digging it and you think, man, I want some more of this. Well, if you have a music library like this, you can go out into the collection and you can pull maybe more albums from that same band. You could grab a solo album or a side project, or if that band sparks an interest or a thought about another band that's very similar, you can go grab that. But all in all, it allows you to pull and have stuff to listen to right at your fingertips. There's so much music that is not available to stream. That's partly why having physical music like this is so important to me. But those are just some of the reasons. Obviously, there's a lot more out there, but it's a passion. I like collecting it. It's fun to do. It's great to share with other people. As I said, the biggest thing is just having that music library to always be able to grab from. You know, instead of having when things go out of print and you can't buy it anymore, I've already got it. Okay, number 2, how do you listen or how do you have time to listen to all of that music, right? So it usually goes right from, you own 12,000 CDs. Well, how do you listen to them all? And again, it's not really about listening to all of the CDs all the time. You know, some people are like, oh, you can't possibly listen to all of those before you pass away. Well, I actually did some math on it and it would be possible to do, but that's not the point. It's not about listening to everything all the time. It's having it at your fingertips. But there is actually a lot of time in the day. And for me at least, and I don't have the same responsibilities that say you have and vice versa, but I usually start by when I wake up first thing in the morning. I like to listen to some music before I get my day started. I always listen on my commute. I take a train into New York City, so I'm not driving. I can then just sit and focus on music listening. While I'm working, sometimes, you know, I'm not in meetings, things like that. If I'm sitting there, most of you guys know I'm an architect, so if I'm doing drawings, doing something that's admin related, I can listen to music. Certainly on the ride home, I've got more time there commuting. I like to listen to it after work to unwind. So even if I didn't have a chance during the day or whatever, that before work and after work kind of listening time is very precious to me. And I like to do it before I go to bed, and I usually fall asleep to it on, so it's playing through the night. If I wake up in the middle of the night, you know, get up for some reason, I usually turn the music back on and fall asleep to it. So it's for me a thing that is constant in my life and makes for a lot of time to fit in listening to music. So for me at least, there's always a way if you really want to. All right, number 3, will you ever stop buying music? You know, they are, if you've hit 12,000, surely you have everything you could possibly want at this point. You don't need anything else. And I don't think there'll ever be that time, because there are times when I think to myself, geez, I must own everything at this point that I want, that's related to the bands that I like. And then I go to a store and I'm perusing through the used sections and stuff, and things just pop out. I recently went to Princeton Record Exchange in Princeton, New Jersey, not far from where I live. And you know, I didn't go in with anything in mind, and I walked out with 11 CDs, not even like struggling to find stuff. Just found some cool things, some rare stuff, some promo stuff, lots of out of print stuff, and even some new stuff. So that's the other thing. There will always be new releases. Bands are always doing archival things, deluxe editions, live albums, you know, so even when bands are no longer together, there's still plenty of stuff to be coming out from them. So I think there will always be stuff that I will be buying. I don't think it'll ever hit a point where I say, gee, there's just nothing I want. But you know what? Once in a while, a week or two goes by and there's no new releases, and I'm not feeling in the mood to go to a record store, and I don't buy anything, and that is fairly rare for me. All right, number 4, do you consider the need to collect a music addiction? And I sort of say yes or no. This is a little tongue-in-cheek kind of question. I mean, some people, again, they're trying to put me down. You know, they said, oh, if you got that much, you must be a hoarder, or you're addicted, or whatever kind of a thing. But there is a feeling that I need to collect, and that I'm always racing to keep up sometimes. And that's not a good thing to have. And I do try to balance that out. But it doesn't prevent me from doing my daily routines, my, you know, living a normal life, going to work, functioning as part of society, and all that sort of stuff. So certainly not an addiction in that regard. I also don't like to go out to bars. I rarely drink. I don't smoke. I don't do any drugs. That's just, you know, how I choose to live my life. But what I'm basically saying is I don't have those kind of vices. Some people like to go out to the bars and will spend $100 on a weekend drinking. I'd rather go to a record store and spend that same $100 and get music. So if you look around and you think about it, that's all my beer money around me from not drinking. And those of you that like to go out drinking all the time would have more money for CDs if you didn't do that. And I know you don't want to give up the drinking, and I totally get it. That's cool. But I'm just sort of saying, you know, I've traded those kind of vices in for my passion and love of collecting music and having all of that music. So I don't really see it as an addiction, because it is something that doesn't take away from me living a normal life too. All right, number 5. Here's one that gave me a good chuckle the first time I was asked it, but surprisingly I've been asked this question a lot. What do you plan to do with your CD collection when you die? And it still just, you know, makes me laugh thinking about it, but it's kind of true. I've got 12,000 CDs now. I'm only 47, so I've been collecting now for since 1989, and what is that, 34 years. You know, I plan to have another 34 years in my life, so 68 plus years, maybe even 70 when I go, that I'll have been collecting music. So will I double this to a 24,000 CD collection? I don't know about that, but yeah, I'm going to have a lot. And I joke about it all the time, and I simply tell people that I plan to be buried with them. And I know that's not really realistic. But why I say that is that what I listen to is not of a popular genre that's out there. None of my friends really listen to this stuff. I mean, you guys know that I hang out with Anthony from Sound Exchange, and I've got my good friend Joe that I go record shopping with and stuff like that. But neither one of them are into the glam metal and stuff that I'm into, and at least not the same degree. I mean, they may have a band here or there that they like. We may cross over on a few bands that we like. But most of my friends that are into music are into way different types of stuff. So for me to say, oh, I would give them my music collection, they really wouldn't care. Right now, I am not married, so I don't have children, so I wouldn't be leaving it to them. But even so, most kids, think about your own if you have them, aren't interested in your music collection, so what good is that? I would probably tell my family members to sell it because it would be worth a pretty penny and they could get some good money out of it. And I'd rather it be that than simply just be donated. But if they were not going to sell it, I would certainly do something like leave it to my friend Anthony for his store, Sound Exchange, at no cost. Just simply give it to him. But I hope I am well far away from passing on, and I don't really need to do much thought on that. But I have made a few provisions here and there just in case, on the off chance that something were to happen to me unexpectedly. But let's hope that's not the case. I've got a lot more music collecting and music listening to do in my lifetime before I go. Okay, number 6. Moving on from that dark topic, right? Why do you prefer CDs over vinyl? I get that one all the time. Today, you know, records are considered popular again. They're big business. There are people that still swear that records sound better than CDs. I disagree with that, and I know we all hear things differently, and then some people say, oh, my hearing is better than your hearing, and I have to completely disagree with that. But then, you know, I don't know how they're hearing either, so for me to say that doesn't really, you know, mean anything anyway. But I do know what I hear, and I have listened to records plenty, you know, vinyl, and I've listened to CDs plenty, and there are differences in records out of the 70s and the first CDs that were pressed in the very early 80s. Yes, those records sounded way better than CDs at that time. CDs have come a long way. By the late 80s and early 90s, CDs did sound better than records. And presently, in my opinion, they sound as good or better. And part of it is also just you get records and there's still hisses and pops and things like that that can be on them when not taken care of. You never get that with CDs. But I grew up in the age of CDs. I started with cassettes, and I hated the fast forward and the rewind and all that sort of stuff. And by 1989, I got my first CD, and I thought, this thing is amazing. I can jump to whatever track I want. I never have to pop it in and hit rewind before I can start listening to it. It sounded way better than cassettes. Oftentimes it came with bonus tracks. There was more length on it. I liked the size of it being smaller than a record. Just everything about it was better to me. And so that's what I grew up with. And a lot of it is just going to be what you grew up with. But for me at least, that's why I choose CDs over vinyl. Even today, I would still take a CD hands down over a record. All right, number 7. Who is your favorite band? You know, every music fan asks that question, but I get asked that question a lot. And so initially it was Motley Crue in 1989. I bought Dr. Feelgood. I went head over heels for that band, and I bought their first 4 albums, so I had all 5 of their albums, and everything was great until 1992 when they fired Vince Neil from the band. He was out, and I just felt let down by my favorite band. I didn't know what they were going to turn into. I didn't know you know, whether I could follow them anymore or whatnot. And so around that same time, Kiss came out with Revenge, and I fell head over heels for that band. I liked what they were doing that was heavy right then, but I also liked all their pop stuff from the 80s. I was a kid, so I loved the makeup from the 70s and just thought that was super cool. And so I became a super Kiss fan for a few years right in there. But in 1994, Pink Floyd dropped the Division Bell. It was a huge moment in the music community. The band coming back out, you know, together to tour, release an album. It had been since, you know, 1987, since their previous album. That was a really long time, 7 years in the music world. Today, not so much, but back then it certainly was. And at that time, I fell in love with that album, and it was like nothing I'd ever heard. And at that point, they became my all-time favorite band, and I have been a fan of Pink Floyd ever since. Animals is probably my favorite album from the 70s era, the original lineup of the band. But if I could only take one, I would still actually choose 1994's Division Bell. That's how much I like that album. But the interesting thing is that I love all 3 of those bands. I still like Motley Crue. I still love Kiss. Huge Pink Floyd fan. But the thing is, I think the all-time best rock album is actually Appetite for Destruction by Guns N' Roses, which is a band I really love. But it's not a Pink Floyd album, it's not a Motley Crue, and it's not a Kiss album, which I've always kind of found interesting. And that just shows how musical taste can change and grow over time. All right, getting towards the end here, number 8. Are you into any non-rock and metal artists? Yes. So people think just because of this channel that all I listen to is rock, hard rock, alternative metal, glam metal, that sort of stuff. And that is my mainstay. I grew up on glam metal, branched out into 70s rock because a lot of the bands like Aerosmith and stuff and Alice Cooper took on doing glam metal. But they came from the 70s when it was straight up rock. So I, just continued with a lot of that stuff and expanded, and then just going on into the 90s and so forth. So my tastes are quite wide. But outside of that, I listen to, and this is growing up, pop like Michael Jackson. Country, I got into Shania Twain and Garth Brooks and stuff like that, and a bunch of others. Rap, I liked Tupac. R&B, I listened to Rick James. For disco music, I love ABBA. Traditional pop, big band, even some jazz leanings. Tony Bennett, a big fan of his. Straight up jazz like Bela Fleck, Dave Brubeck, and classical music. I love the works of Vivaldi, Bach. So just a wide array of things that I listen to, not just the rock, metal, music like that. And number 9, I always get asked, do you listen to any modern artists, especially by younger people that tune into my channel? And of course, I talk a lot about 70s and 80s rock bands, but that's what I grew up with. Doesn't mean that I'm not listening to modern stuff today. I just don't focus on it as much, mostly because that newer stuff isn't what draws in the people that are interested in viewing my channel. So the channel is kind of curated towards the specific genre and things that I like, that others like, and so forth. But I do listen in pop music to Lady Gaga, Adele, Miley Cyrus. Country, I like Shane Smith and the Saints. For rap, Iggy Azalea. New rock bands like Blackstone Cherry. Metal, I listen to some of that newer wave thrash stuff like Enforcer, Cauldron, Municipal Waste. Alternative bands, Red Sun Rising. So I listen to plenty of new bands out there as well. And when I say listen to these, I mean I own stuff by them. This isn't just streaming or once in a while hearing something. I own all of the music that I just mentioned in both the non-rock stuff that I listened to from question 8 and into 9 here. So I have all of these artists on CD and in some fashion. Okay, and number 10, probably the one that everybody gets asked, and certainly myself here, what 5 albums would you take with you to a desert island? So no particular order, but I am going to do a countdown on it in terms of the top 5 albums. So Rat Detonator, I absolutely love that. I think it is the best Rat album, start to finish. I love it. Probably because Desmond Child co-wrote all the songs with the band, but it is just a phenomenal album from start to finish, and I know other Rat fans out there feel the same on it, including Anthony from Sound Exchange, who's not really a glam metal fanatic, but he loves that album. Another glam metal group, Poison, Flesh and Blood. Love that band. They were kind of my introduction really to glam metal. I came up on the Open Up and Say Ah album, but the first one that I bought and had on my own was Flesh and Blood. I can still listen to that one nonstop. Every single track there. I love the nuances in it. It's just one of those ones that has never gotten tired for me. Then Journey, Greatest Hits. I'm not a big Greatest Hits fan, but that is the first Journey album that I had, and I listened to that nonstop, and I did buy it because it had so many hits on it. But the flow of that, it had 2 new songs on it at the time, or songs that came from soundtracks but weren't on Journey albums. So there was some stuff on there that you couldn't get on the album, so it made it worthwhile to me. But I love the flow of that, and it's one of those ones that I can fall asleep to. If I ever just don't know what to listen to, that is an album I can put on. As I mentioned earlier in this episode, my all-time favorite rock album is Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction. So that one's in here too. And of course, the number 1 album, my all-time favorite band, Pink Floyd, Division Bell. I've got to have that. But all 5 of these albums I think are stellar from start to finish. And I know that's a personal preference. These are my 5 albums that I would take to a desert island. I'm not saying that these have to be your 5 albums or the 5 greatest albums of all time, but I know a lot of people will take it that way. But these are my favorite ones. So there you go. Now I asked you guys to stick around to the end because I had something to announce here, and this is now your chance to ask me questions. So you've been with my channel a while, or you've ever perused through my channel, then you know a long time back, probably more than a year ago at this point, if not longer, maybe even a couple of years, I used to do question and answer session videos. And I haven't done any in quite some time, and I thought it would be time to do a new one. So leave your questions for me in the comments. Ask me ones that are not these 10, but ask me other ones that you want to know things about. And within reason, I will answer pretty much anything. You can ask it about music, of course. You can ask it about my job. You can ask it about this channel. You can ask it about my personal life. Like I said, within reason, I will answer anything. I usually kind of group it down into those 3 categories there, and I'll pull the best ones together. And then in a few days or so, I'll gather all of those up. Well, I'll give you at least a couple days to ask all these questions. Then I'll gather up the best ones. I'll put together a question and answer session where I'll go through and answer those questions. And hopefully you guys will have fun. We'll enjoy me putting that together, but you guys seeing it. All right, everyone, so hopefully you enjoyed this episode of 10 music questions I get asked the most. I had a lot of fun putting this together and rethinking about all of these questions. So there you go. Take care. Leave your comments below and questions for future video, and I'll be talking to you real soon. Bye-bye, everyone.